Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Doctors of Running podcast, where we, a group of doctors of physical therapy, discuss the art and science of running and the stuff that we put on our feet. Today at the round table, we have the founder of Doctors of Running and all-around great guy, Matthew Klein. We also have Dr. David Salas and myself. I am Nathan Brown, and we have a fun episode today. We're going to be doing a full breakdown of the Topo Athletic kind of shoe quiver. We're going to be going through all of their road stuff, all their trail stuff, the minimalist stuff, the performance line now. There's a lot of things that we're excited to cover. Although it's gaining a lot of popularity and it's landing a lot of spots, I think that there's still a group of people, I would say a lot of people, who don't put this in kind of the main companies that make running shoes that may include things like Nike or Asics or Saucony, New Balance. It doesn't quite always land in those conversations, but as hopefully you learned today, I think that there's a lot to be excited about with this company. This is one that we have all enjoyed for different reasons and different shoes. Some shoes who haven't worked for all of us, but they've worked for some people, and they're starting to have a real lineup that could suit a lot of different runners. But before we get to that, as always, this episode is powered by our partners, Rabbit Running. So Rabbit, they have awesome apparel. We're wearing our Doctors of Running brand and stuff. That all probably just got shipped if anyone did the pre-order. So that was super fun to do. So if you're getting that and you purchased that, thank you for supporting us and being a part of the Doctors of Running community. But if you're looking to check out any of Rabbit's apparel, you can go on to runninrabbit.com and you can use the code AUGDOR10, so AUGDOR10, during the month of August for 10% off your first order over $50. But now let's get into the stuff that we are testing. So this is when we talk about different shoes or different apparel that we might be getting some miles and testing stuff in. Matt, what do you got on your feet?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I could. I think I could talk about this because I saw somebody post about it. But one of the major trainers that I have right now is the Adidas Supernova Prima 3, which evolves on their kind of premium daily training shoe. It really is doing as advertised, meaning it's very much in that stable neutral category. There are some rods that kind of run through here like a lot of the Adidas Supernova shoes are, but nice sidewalls, fairly stiff in a couple different in all directions, and then a really, really nice forefoot rocker up the front here that's very, very noticeable. That just rolls before, which right now with my Achilles being edge shaded again because I've done stuff, that forefoot rocker really is nice and kind of takes some pressure off there. What is interesting is the fit is quite snug and narrow. I've got some mild kind of like pressure on my toes. Luckily, no bruising after a long run this morning, but it's definitely on the narrower, snug side fit. What I am not liking as much is they really kind of moved back. Adidas was doing really good on their posterior lateral bevels, even with some posterior flare. They pulled that back, and that rear foot's a little bit clunky now just because it's the bevel's toned down. There's no posterior lateral bevel. It's actually angled very slightly medial. So rear foot just a teeny bit clunky, but I'm landing a little bit more farther forward anyway. The other thing is this, they're called New Dream Strike Pro, which please don't quote me on this. One of the initial things is this may be an ATPU based midsole. It is very firm. It is responsive, but it is very firm. It is not soft. It's not plush. It's firmer, responsive. I actually did some strides in this and really liked it for the strides. Not a racing shoe, but just an interesting take in today's trainer. So narrow fitting, firmer, responsive, significant forefoot rocker is where this is coming in. It's been interesting. Got 50 miles on them, and as usual, super durable. I'm still getting miles on the New Balance SC Elite version 6. It is definitely growing on me. The lack of a heel counter is really, really good and super comfortable. I'm still feeling a little bit like, and myself, David, Andrea have had a little bit different experiences where David, you and Andrea kind of felt like did better longer distances. I'm enjoying it for shorter stuff. I think it's just going to depend on you and your biomechanics. Still liking it for longer stuff, and somehow the outsole is still intact at 50 miles. So that'll keep going. Final two, one of which I'm wearing, but the other one, the Salomon Genesis 2, which is probably one of the few technically stability, even though it's not fully qualified as that, trail shoes, the large medial sidewall here. It's been really nice. The lugs are very, very good and aggressive in this shoe. Very nice and stable for a trail shoe. And the other one, I'm assuming, David, you may have on you, and I'll let you talk about it because you just wrote a quick review, is the North Face. Oh my gosh. what's the
Off-Trail Ultra.
Off-Trail Ultra is very comfortable. I'm wearing it on my feet right now, but I'll let you talk about it if you have it, because I think you have more miles than me.
Yeah. Is that all you had?
That's all I have.
Okay, so we can go to the North Face Off-Trail Ultra. I'd be very curious your take on this, because I think it was just accidental. I got the original Genesis, so I don't have the Genesis 2.
Yep.
But being that is kind of like the stability trail trainer right now, this is one of the most stable trainers I've run in on the trail. The North Face Off-Trail Ultra, very, very stable on foot. To the point where like I felt like my confidence actually went up in running on trails, which is kind of a cool sensation where you kind of are like, oh, I'm just going to run over those rocks.
Yeah.
You know, where you're not really thinking about it as much. And that like is pretty rare. I'm not that good of a trail runner, you know, like, I mean, I can run in them, but like, I don't consider myself to be very good at it. And this was a shoe that very quickly let me get it dirty, and I felt okay with it. You know what I mean? And it's interesting. It's like only like 9.5 ounces. It's super light.
Yep.
Moderate stack height by today's standards. I mean, it's like 35-29. But it's a supercritical nitrogen infused midsole. It's like a blend. It's like a EVA TPU kind of blend. So it's a different kind of foam, but it's a soft foam, but you have these super thick, just 5mm lugs that are full contact. They're super sticky. They're meant for technical terrain. That's what this was designed for. Whereas when you look at, like, let's say the Alta Mesa 500 version 2, it's a little bit more road to trail. Lugs aren't quite as aggressive. Sharper rocker up front in that forefoot. This is a much more balanced rocker where you have a heel bevel, but it's very gradual. Forefoot, very gradual, early stage rocker. It just feels very rhythmic on foot. Dare I say this might be in the contender for Trail Shoe of the Year at the end of the year? We'll see. I really, really liked it and just wrote the review earlier today. So super happy with it.
How does the foam compare to the Alta Mesa? No.
Alta Mesa.
Yeah, okay. Alta Mesa. Like, how does the foam underfoot feel compare?
This one's probably, the Alta Mesa feels like it can just take a beating. Like it's kind of like a little bit softer, probably not the fastest. I would say this feels similar, but a little better, if that makes sense. Like it's just a little more snappy. I still wouldn't quite say that it's like a responsive foam. It definitely feels better in rhythm, but it's lightweight and it is plush. It's an interesting experience because you can definitely feel the firmness of the rubber under it.
Sure.
So the foam itself is soft, but there's so much rubber underneath that like it firms up the platform. So it feels firmer than it probably is.
Yeah.
But it's good. It's actually, it again feels like it could take a beating. I got dirt all over my shirt. But yeah, no, it feels good. Like honestly, if I was running an ultra tomorrow, it would definitely be in the consideration, and that's with the Salomon Ultra Glide and S-Lab Ultra Glide in mind as well, you know, which are shoes that I loved earlier this year. So yeah, I'm very curious later in the year, kind of when I'm really teasing things out, but I really was happy with the North Face Off-Trail Ultra. And at first I was almost like, is this a hiking shoe? Like when the naming sounds weird when it's like off trail, like, am I supposed to go backpacking with this or like go to different things? Like, and then it has like the built-in gaiter, you know, and the booty construction. And that's actually one thing I'll bring up real quick too, not to gas up the shoe too much, but I tend to struggle with gaiters usually that are built in. And a lot of times the heel counter is really firm and hard at the bottom of those like gaiters. And like in the Tecton X, I couldn't run in it. It was literally cutting my like heel on both medial and lateral side. And I've really struggled with that in a lot of shoes. This, and Matt probably loves this. I'm like, I was thinking about you when I was running in this earlier. This is a flexible, like there is a heel counter, but it's super flexible in there. There's just like a tiny bit of firmness. It's just enough to hold the structure. And it's like the way it's angled, if I hold it up like that, it follows that kind of retro calcaneal design. There is space. So people who have Haglund's deformities, like they probably will do okay with this.
I would agree. It's been actually amazing. And this is literally kind of what I've been, not kind of, I can't talk. It's been what I been talking about for a lot of companies, where you don't always have to have that posterior aspect be super firm. And yeah, it's their heel counter, whatever you want to call it. The heel structure is a little bit more flexible in the whole thing, but they've got two pads along the medial and lateral side, which locks the foot in really well. And yet the thing is still flexible. So it's super comfortable for me as someone with a Haglund deformity, and again, another flare up where my Achilles tendon is actually sensitive to pressure. It's totally fine. And I feel like this is one of the first shoes where a gaiter has actually fit well and been like, oh, I get this. Like, I do trail stuff. I get stuff in my shoes all the time, but I'm just like, it's just part of this, because a lot of the gaiters have been like not worth the trade-off. This is one of the first ones that have been like, this is really comfortable. And yeah, by the way, David, I'm getting the same stable feeling, even though it's not the widest midsole. It almost feels like there is either like a slight wedge or there's like a medial plus. I don't know if it's the mild sidewall or what it is. It's a very stable shoe.
There is that heel sidewall that's noticeable.
There is,
It really cradles you through there, and there's
really
a little bit of reinforcement too, just throughout the upper.
Yeah.
Forefoot's a little bit wider underfoot, but yeah, it's not the widest platform, but there's a little bit of sole flaring, and all the things we talk about are there. Yeah. I think it's also the lugs. They surprisingly, like, for not being like a Vibram Mega Grip or some kind of Continental or whatever, like for it being a proprietary mid or outsole, like it stuck really, really well.
Super well. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's the summer months here. I didn't get chances to really run on wet rock or anything or mud, but like for what it's worth, like I tried to take it through what I consider technical footing, and I felt like it did okay. I mean, like I said, if I felt like I actually had some confidence running over the rocks where I don't normally have that confidence. Like I can run through them, but I'm usually just a little bit more shuffly and like just a little bit more careful, where I felt like this time I was like, okay, no, we're just running through this.
Yeah.
So
agreed.
That was kind of a cool feeling. So sorry, that was a long-winded North Face off trail ultra, but yeah, I mean, meant for ultra marathons. Next one up, now we're going to go more on the road side of things. This is the Puma Velocity Nitro 5.
Oh, nice.
Nice shoe. I don't think I'm a Velocity bro. I'm sorry to the internet, but it's not bad. It actually is really nice. It's kind of classic Puma. Like it's a little bit more narrow fitting throughout. Volume's a little bit lower. It's an ATPU based midsole now, and at $140, it is a really nice shoe. I did a video comparing it with the Deviate Pure Nitro, and I think just for what I prefer in my shoes, I actually am more on the Deviate Pure Nitro side. But the ATPU, for what it's worth, it is plush, it is soft. It's actually lower stack than I thought. Depending on where you look, it's like 33 or 34 in the heel. And then there's a 8mm drop, so whatever that is in the forefoot, 25, 26, something like that. So it's not like the highest stacked shoe, but it feels higher than that. Like it is a soft foam, but I don't feel like I get quite as much bounce out of it as I do in the Deviate, and it's a lot more flexible. Like this shoe definitely has bend. It's like, this is kind of like what that traditional flagship neutral kind of used to be, right? That kind of Nike Pegasus, Brooks Ghost, like heels definitely higher than the forefoot. You got a little bit of flexibility up front, not the most rockered. I mean, there is a bevel, but it's not, this isn't a stiffly rockered shoe, but it's a nice shoe and I like it. I just think I like the Deviate Pure Nitro more. And if people want my thoughts on that, they can watch the video. But yeah, awesome. You had your hand up. What was that?
Super light too. Do you remember the weight?
Oh,
it's like
yes.
8 ounces.
It's like right around 8 ounces. Yeah.
Super light.
But then the Deviate's like 7.5. Sure. So,
yeah.
And higher.
Yeah.
Like it's like kind of like, I don't know. I just go with the Deviate personally for the extra $10, but Deviate Pure, that is. Yeah. Sorry. But it is a really nice shoe. Do not get me wrong. It's a nice option. And then I got two more here. I won't go too long about this, but this is the Salomon Aeroblaze 4. No secret, I struggled with the Aeroblaze 3. I really wanted to like it. I really like the foam, that beaded TPU kind of sensation where it's just really bouncy. It's resilient. It's soft, but it's kind of on the firmer end of soft. Like it just kind of has like a quick rebound to it. It's beveled pretty well in the heel. Forefoot's much more gradual. You can definitely feel that Contigrip pod up front, like where you're digging into it. And it's a very like nimble, snappy, kind of just fun ride. But where this shoe has always kind of struggled is in that stability realm. And the midfoot has always been narrow. The outsole is decently thick. And in theory, there should be a little bit of guidance, but I've always struggled with it. But I feel like the upper in this version, that's mainly what the update is. It locks you down to that platform just a little bit better. And I do feel like the experience is noticeably better than the 3. I was able to run multiple 10-mile runs in this, so I couldn't run more than like 5 in the 3. So it's definitely better. It's a true neutral shoe. If you have like any stability concerns, probably not the shoe for you. But it's also like in that low 8-ounce category, lightweight foam, responsive shoe. Like this is definitely like the more nimble, fun trainer from Salomon, where like the Aero Glide would be like their neutral, like workhorse trainer. Although that's still pretty light too. And then last one here is probably going to be the most surprising of the bunch, and that's going to be the K-Swiss Shad X.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. K-Swiss is back, baby.
It's back.
It's actually really nice too.
Well, it's what, $75?
It's $75. Yeah, for $75, this is like, honestly, it's really nice. I still need to run in it, but standing and walking, like the fit's a little bit snug. It's not the widest. Like I mean, the forefoot's decently wide. The volume's a little lower, so it just makes it feel a little snug. But the like foam underneath, it's an EVA foam, but it is soft and it's compliant and it has give. Like if I go and press it there, like I can squish it, you know. It's just nice, you know. It's a balanced rocker. It's nothing like crazy to rave about, you know, but it is nice and it's built well. I feel like it should last decently well. So we'll see. I don't know. I feel like it's comparable to a lot of the flagships we've seen in recent years. That. So at $75, you know, maybe it will be a dark horse.
I'm excited for you to run it.
I got to weigh it. I don't have the specs on the weight. I mean, it's definitely a little bit heavier. This feels closer to like high 9s, low 10s. But I don't have confirmation on that in my 9.5.
The silhouette looks like there's a little bit of a posterior flare, but I don't know if...
Yeah, there's a little bit, but it's beveled.
Okay.
Yeah, it is rounded, you know, for sure.
Cool.
So we'll see. You know, it's one of those things, we'll just have to run in it and see how it does. But for 75, if it feels as good running as it did on the initial step in, yeah, not a bad option. Yeah, that's all I got. That's
cool. Well, I don't have any new running shoes. I've been running a lot of shoes that I've already tested and gotten through all the paces, but I wanted to bring up one of the running shoes that I did my long run in this past weekend. So it's the Mag Max 2 from Puma. And when I was running in it, I realized that I think for that case use, like an easy longer run, so I did like an hour and a half, so it was a little over 10 miles. It felt the most similar to my favorite shoe so far this year, the On Cloud Monster 3 Hyper, at that kind of just rhythmic pace, because it's a little bit firmer. It operates off of this rocker and it's stiffer, not quite as stiff and operating fully off the rocker as the Cloud Monster Hyper 3, but it was great. It just felt light. It felt kind of just rhythmic, light on foot, lighter than its listed weight. And the fit is okay. I think that's one of the only issues I have, is just a little bit narrow through the forefoot, and they have some sidewalls. So if you're sensitive to sidewalls and it's more narrow, that might be your problem. But it was a really nice run in that shoe. The other shoes that I've been testing out have been technically they're running shoes. I'm not using them for running. And so the reason I was getting mixed up with the Alta Mesa 500 was because I'm also testing the Mesa Trail 2 from Zero. And so this is one of their kind of trail. They say it's a running shoe. I'm using it just for hiking and kind of walking and getting around. And, you know, we went camping. So it's like stuff like that is what I'm going to be using it for. So they kind of have two trail shoes that I've tested. The other one is the Scrambler Low. And then this is the Mesa Trail 2. Without even looking at specs, what I would say is that the Scrambler Low is like, they're really flexible, kind of very nimble type shoe, where there's a bit more structure to the Mesa Trail. So the upper is more structured. There's a bit more of a heel counter. It's a little bit stiffer and thicker through the upper, so there's some more support there. Whereas the Scrambler Low is like super flexible in comparison. The upper is really mobile. There is not a heel counter in the back here. So depending on what direction you're trying to go, if you're in the minimalist camp, like I love this for daily wear. And I wore the Mesa Trail 2 to work most of the last couple weeks. It's just really comfortable, even just to walk around in. But then I love going on hikes in this as well. And like the hiking that I'm doing is not like 14-mile hikes in a day. they're an hour or so going on a hike or going out on a walk. So it's been really great for that. And I've got some trips coming up that I plan to use them for because it's been great. So gives a lot of the flexibility, but a little bit more structure than the Scrambler Low. I think after I test it out on some of those other hikes, I'll know which one that I would prefer because I don't have my full decision yet on which one I would pick. The other one, I guess, is one that we're going to get to when talking about Topo. So I'll just save it for when we go into that space. So that's what we've been testing. That's what we've got on our feet. This is, as usual, fueled by Skratch Labs. And so if you're looking for any additional run fuel, run hydration, post-run recovery stuff, you can check out all of Skratch's stuff at skratchlabs.com. You can use the code Doctors of Running to get 20% off your first order. We ready to break down Topo?
Yeah.
All right.
Some shoes closer to me.
So as I kind of mentioned before, what we want to do is give a full rundown of the brand. We probably won't dig deep into every single shoe that they have, but we will dig into a number of them and kind of give some comparisons between different models. We kind of clumped the shoes into 4 categories. We've got their road stuff, which is what we're going to start with, and then we'll kind of cycle right into the performance wear, most of that right now, which is for the roads. Then we'll kind of go through their trail stuff. And then at the end, they've got a couple shoes that we would really classify in the minimalist footwear. And there's 2 shoes in there that are actually very distinct from one another in terms of feel and use. So it'll be fun to walk through those. So let's get started on the road. They kind of have, yeah, Matt, what's up?
Would you mind if we did a little intro on Topo in general and kind of some of the things that make them unique? Only because they are, I think, one of the things, if you don't mind. So Topo, their origin story, Tony Post, who's the major leader of the brand, was, correct me if I'm wrong, an ex-CEO of Vibram, like kind of worked on a lot of that stuff, came over going, hey, I want a minimalist type shoe, but one that maybe isn't as extreme as some of the Vibram 5 fingers, where I want something a little bit more balanced that allows me to have toe splay, move around. So what came of that was this unique brand that still, there's some other brands somewhat similar to this, but this very nice toe box, while still a fairly and not snug, but really good security. Some other brands, variable in how they fit. Sometimes even though it's wide and anatomic, there's some variation. Topo has done really well with having a very wide toe box and then getting somewhat snug in the midfoot and rear foot, so you have really good security. And they have variation in their drop. Before others were doing this, they were the ones who had the wide toe box where if you needed just a little bit of heel drop, 5 millimeters, 4 millimeters, they have it. So I feel like it's a really good balance of a little drop and not being extreme. A little drop, really nice wide toe box. For me personally, it is a go-to orthopedic shoe prescription where if somebody's coming in going, hey, you've got some foot and ankle stuff, you have a hallux rigidus where you really can't have that, or you have hallux valgus, i.e. where either the big toe is too stiff or it's getting pushed too lateral, and I'm trying to go, hey, we're trying to work on alignment. You've got it neuroma where you need to get a little bit more space there, but maybe you're not ready for something that's zero drop or more extreme. This is a go-to shoe, not necessarily for running, although I think they have definitely moved forward in that direction. We're going to talk about that. Some very good biomechanically appropriate designs that make it a really easy shoe for me to go, you know what? These are the things that we're looking for. These are some things you might want to consider. They're becoming more popular, meaning you can find them very frequently. REI carries them a lot. More and more running stores are carrying them. So you're starting to see them more and more, but it's the biomechanical factors of how they design their shoes that I really appreciate, including the wide toe box, having a variety of drops, either 5 millimeter all the way to 0, and then just having some fairly good geometry. In the past, I would have said, hey, the foams aren't the most exciting. These kind of more like kind of a lot more on that walking spectrum, but they've really made some very intentional choices in terms of their midsole foams across their line that have very much changed that. So very appreciative of what they do. There are other companies out there. Ultra is doing really good. Veloci, which I hope I said that right, is a company that we haven't tested, but also has that wide toe box. And it's just nice to see that. However, if you have a very narrow foot and you're sensitive to wide toe box, these may not be appropriate because you may slide around a little bit. For those wanting some toe splay, it's an absolutely excellent option.
I think I've said for a while too, like especially as they were gaining popularity. Because now I feel like, I mean, they're in REI and they're in box stores. Like they're big enough now. I don't think it'd be doing them a discredit to say that they're like some kind of underdog. They are around. I see them around. But they were almost that baby between Hoka and Ultra, where you had the kind of the wide toe box, but you had a little bit more of a rocker design and a little bit of drop. Because people just didn't really have that. And now they do, you know, like you have like the Ultra Forward series and you have Hoka's gotten a little bit wider and things, but like for a little while there, they were kind of this niche fit that just didn't quite exist anywhere else. And yeah, they do it really well. I mean, we've said it year after year. They have some of the best uppers out there. Like they do a good job with fit.
Yeah. And I would say like it's a little more than even just width. It's volume in the forefoot.
Yep.
None of the shoes that they throw out are snug from top to bottom. They give you enough volume up and they give you enough width wide. So I remember, and I'll never get rid of this shoe. The shoe that I'm holding up right now.
Magnafly 4?
It's the Magnafly 4. This
Yeah.
upper, when I put this shoe on, I was like, this is the absolute most comfortable upper I've ever put on ever. And I just won't get rid of the shoe because of how comfortable I remember it being. It's lost its magic. I actually have the 5 in my office. Anyway, they just do a phenomenal job with fit. I think the other thing, Matt, you had started to mention too, they've made some foam changes. And so just to kind of run through some of their foams. So their typical foam is the zip foam. That's their EVA compound that you'll find in a lot of their trainers that we'll talk about. Then you had the kind of next wave of foam that they were using for performance stuff early on was the Pebax powered midsole. So you saw that in like the Cyclone series. And then now with their newest performance line, their Pro Series, they've got the Rev Foam, which is an ATPU. So we'll break those down in terms of feel later, because even Zip Foam has gone through evolutions of its feel since its beginning to now. So we'll get into some of that stuff, but that's their main midsole compounds. They also, correct me if I'm wrong, they're kind of a Vibram. They're still tied to Vibram in terms of using their outsoles.
A lot of Vibram outsoles, yeah.
Yeah, as you said, Matt, you know, Tony Post was a big part of the 5-finger shoe, and I always joke that I could never wear them because I have webbed toes, which I do have webbed toes, and therefore I can't, but, you know. So it's nice that now I have options from Tony Post that aren't the 5-fingers. But also, like you said, Matt, they kind of beat Ultra to the punch, because Ultra was like, we're doing this thing where we have a wide toe box, we want anatomic fit, but they only had 0 drop. And that was a stance that they had that isolated people who weren't willing to go there. And then Topo came in and they offered these varieties. And, you know, Ultra has now, like we said, I mean, we recently did the bracket for daily trainers, and part of Ultra's Forward series like made it really far in there because it's a phenomenal shoe. So they're doing good work too. But it was kind of interesting to see Topo come in and stick to kind of their guns, but also throw out something that was not like revolutionary, but different enough that kind of allowed them to carve out a space.
I will say I'm curious to see how things go forward, because Ultra, I've got to look at some of the newer, I don't know if anybody's done this research, but there was some research done that Ultra actually has some of the highest brand loyalty of anybody. And I think it was because of that fit. And so I would not be surprised if Topo also goes into that, because people do like these wide toe boxes. They're comfortable.
It's the Lone Peak, man.
Yeah.
The Lone Peak.
Yeah, that's fair.
The Lone Peak fam out there. I mean, it's a nice shoe. I do like the Lone Peak. That's not a stab at anyone. Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to narrow to do what's the term? Isolate or like leave out the narrow foot fam, knowing that and not everybody works with this really wide toe box, but people like being able to spread their toes. So I get it.
And there's a lot of shoes that don't describe their fit as anatomic, but they have great width. Like On typically has a lot of space in the forefoot, but that's not what this is about. So should we jump into the lines? All right, so let's start with the road. I think I'll throw out a couple of the shoes that kind of are paired together. David, you wanted to say something?
I was just going to say they're also out in the Boston area, if anyone ever gets that confused with them being out in the Colorado area. There are some uncultured people on this podcast.
I will never live that down.
All right, we can continue.
You know what? To be fair, we also, I don't remember if it was me or who that was like, oh, they're probably never going to put have a carbon plated super shoe. And then now they have
Nate.
like the best.
That was also me.
Nate's 0-for-2.
So you know what? If, if you don't understand those jokes, you'll just have to go back and listen to all the episodes that we've ever recorded, because it all comes out there where I make a fool of myself.
I think I was with you. I think I agreed with you and then was totally wrong. So, this is what it is.
I think I was just making a cheeky smirk. I didn't even know anything, but I'm like, I have a feeling they're going to do it.
I had no idea.
Yeah. We'll get into that in a bit.
Yeah.
All right. So the first couple shoes in their road series, I would say, is kind of their flagship neutral trainer, and then kind of the elevated neutral trainer. So think, Pegasus to Vomero, or think Clifton to Bondi. And so the two shoes there are the Topo Phantom and the Topo Atmos 2. So the Phantom, we're on the Phantom 4 now. The Phantom 4 is 35 millimeters in the heel, 30 in the forefoot, 9.3 ounces, comes at $150. So very positioned similarly to all these other kind of flagship trainers. And then the Atmos 2, just to give the specs right away, is up a little bit in terms of stack. Gets you 40 millimeters in the heel, 35 in the forefoot, 9.9 ounces, and comes in at $170. And so you're seeing, again, elevation in stack, elevation in price. You're looking at zip foam in the midsole of both of these. What's y'all's take on these two models?
They're great.
Cool. Moving on to the next. No, I'm just kidding.
I think it's an interesting shoe. I feel like this is one of those things where it almost is like Clifton to Bondi, like where the Phantom is just kind of a neutral rockered shoe, kind of that stable neutral. You got some sole flaring going on, wide base, good lockdown. Like, yeah, it's a great shoe. But the foam isn't exactly like the most exciting. Like, it's enough to just give you good cushioning and give you nice predictable miles. You just fall into rhythm, go to sleep, and then go on about your day after the run. The Atmos is kind of an evolution of that. It's a little bit higher. It's definitely plush for Topo. That is their max cushion shoe, and it's a nice rocker, a little bit stiffer. It's just a nice, pleasant experience. Again, nothing overly lively, coming from the foam, but it's a nice upper. It's just a nice geometry, and it's cushioned enough for whatever you need it to do. So it's just a workhorse trainer.
Yep.
I would agree with that. Where the unique part is, again, the fits that make it so like kind of special here. But I agree with David said. Nathan?
I think that the Phantom was the first time they brought kind of the new feel of zip foam. So like the Phantom 3 was very firm. Phantom 4, you actually get a taste of softness within that shoe. As you said, it's not this responsive midsole, but it is softer in the 4. It's also, when you compare the Phantom to the Atmos, the Phantom does flex in the forefoot because that foam is a bit softer. Whereas you look at the Atmos, and because of the extra stack, it feels a little bit firmer, and it does not have as much flex in the forefoot. So if you're verging towards wanting some flexibility in the forefoot, a little bit more using your full foot in terms of motion versus something that is more operating on the rocker. I think the other thing that I've noticed about the Phantom, and Topo does this in general, they use, is it called Ortholite kind of insoles?
Yes.
They typically have a pretty pronounced sidewall and kind of curving up and kind of giving a cradle. Yep. And so they do that both in the heel and then into the midfoot, and sometimes in the Phantom into like kind of the lateral forefoot. And I know for Andrea and I, that was kind of a struggle for both of us. Sorry, this is an old Phantom 3. I just wanted to pull it out because I like that shoe too. But I know that was a problem for Andrea and I, that sidewall, if you're sensitive to those, they're definitely noticeable in the Phantom. Whereas in the Atmos, I didn't notice it as much, but I think it's because I wasn't sinking down as much because there's more foam there.
I think with the other thing that you might also experience too, and I think Andrew mentioned this, is the arch is quite high. Yeah. So you got a little bit of sidewall, but the arch is also very high there. For someone like me, it works very well. For others, if you're sensitive to that, just be aware that Topo can sometimes have a higher arch, but that's not always consistent. And the Atmos is a great example where not as high, kind of flatter, not unstable, but just less intrusive isn't the right word, pronounced. But you're less aware of it. Pronounced is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So the next two models are in more of their road running stability category. So in here you have the Ultrafly 6, which is a little bit of the lower stack, and then you have the Aura, which is the higher stack. So I'll just run through specs. The Ultrafly 6, you're looking at 32 millimeters in the heel, 27 in the forefoot, 9.6 ounces, coming at $150. So same price as the Phantom. And then you look at the Aura, which is 38 in the heel, 33 in the forefoot, 10.9 ounces, coming at $170. Again, similar to the Atmos. So Matt, how would you describe how Topo likes to do stability and what you think about these models?
It's very interesting. So we have not tested the Ultrafly 6. I ran in version 5, and then we haven't got tested yet, but I have tons of miles on the Aura 2. I never thought I would say this, but they are very unique because they still do medial posts, which is very interesting. And a medial post is a firmer bit of material, usually on the medial side. Although what they do in the Aura is they've got kind of this Y thing where it extends into the midfoot, but there's also a piece that goes over into the lateral keel so that you aren't getting excessively pushed laterally or medially. So they have medial posts, and it's very nice for those that want that because people don't do that anymore. And I hope that I know I didn't have influence over this because I'm not special, but like in the past, we used to talk about, hey, there's a medial post, and then the medial post started disappearing, I think because people were going, stability shoes don't work. And there was some fairness to that because they were being overprescribed. Not everybody needs stability, but those of us that did, all of a sudden started losing that. So we were talking about other methods, but they've stuck to their guns and kept with medial posts. And for those that want, and the thing with medial posts is often you will notice some extra pressure on the inside of your foot. If you like that, these are great options. None of them are extreme. They're not going to be your high level, although this shoe has changed quite a bit. Your high level, like older Brooks Beast kind of thing, where you have this massive medial post. The new one is totally different. It's more mild stability. And then they also have the other factors like that make shoes inherently stable. Wider soles, midfoot that's not narrowed, sometimes a little bit extra sidewall stuff going in, a little more significant rocker that rolls you forward. So they balance out a lot of things while not leaving out some of the more traditional methods of stability. So they integrate things very well together.
Man, I'm surprised you did not take the opportunity to do some sort of dad joke with them keeping medial posts as their option.
I guess not. I don't know. I think I'm more impressed because most companies have gotten rid of it. And so it provides a really good option. Yeah, I don't know.
Are you following
it's going over it. He's not.
I'm not.
Who's the founder of Who's the founder of Topo?
Oh, I didn't think
Tony
about that.
Post.
Got it. Tony Post.
Maybe
that is why. Got it. I feel like Tony coming from Vibram would be much like very anti-medial post, but I'm happy he's kept that, which again, this adds, I know I see the joke, but it's nice because it adds some variety to the, And also another orthopedic reason where it's like, hey, sometimes stable neutral isn't enough for certain people and they want to feel that pressure. So that's where this become a common thing. Not saying everybody needs a medial post. It's just nice to go, oh, these still do exist.
They exist. Awesome. David, do you have anything to add to those? I have not tested the stability models.
I'm not sure there's too much more I can add. I mean, they do a really good job with sole flare and shaping of the shoe as well. It just makes for a really solid platform to stand on. And I've seen the Aura specifically in a lot of my patients, and they're getting them from REI and they love them. I've been seeing, honestly, I've probably seen more Aura models than I have any other Topo shoe. Now that I'm thinking about it even closer, like a lot of Auras. And they do really well. I think they're one of my favorite standing and walking models for sure. And it's not like it's bad at running. It's just a lot of shoe. And I just tend to like a little less shoe than that, but it is stable. It's a solid shoe. Yeah. It's a lot. It's kind of like what we used to describe like the Mizuno Wave Horizon.
Yep.
Yes.
Where it was kind of like this Cadillac, right? Where it was just like, it's stable and it's plush, but like it is not going fast.
Lot.
It's like, it's a lot of shoe. Yeah.
I will say they have improved the Aura 1 and Aura 2. I totally agree with David. I have seen this shoe a lot on people, much more than I was like, oh, this is great. Version 1 didn't have as significant as what it felt like, didn't have as much structure and as significant a forefoot rocker. Version 2 is much more runnable for that reason. That forefoot just transitions so much smoother, and the zip bone being a little bit softer does help it. Is it a fast shoe? No, it's one of the heavier road shoes in the Topo lineup, but it is getting better in that regard.
Awesome.
But yeah, it's been primarily my standing walking go-to shoe.
Cool. All right. So the last two shoes that also exist in their kind of road models are the Flylight 6 and the Magnafly. So these don't necessarily cleanly fit into a scaffolded model, but they kind of give this hybrid between either zero drop or close to minimalist without being true minimalist footwear. So some specs: Flylight 6, you're looking at 23 in the heel, 20 in the forefoot. So it's one of their few 3mm drop shoes. You're looking at 7.8 ounces, coming in at $130. So it's also using the zip foam, and that's the Flylight. You have the Magnafly 6, which is a zero drop shoe. It's got 26 milliliters as its stack, 9 ounces, and it is $140. So both of these shoes come in on the cheaper side of their, road models. But what's your experience with these two?
I can't speak on the Flylight. I haven't run in a Flylight to this day yet. But as far as the Magnafly goes, if I was like a zero drop junkie, this might be my shoe.
Yeah.
Like, even not being a zero drop person traditionally, I do really like it. And it's just like, there's not a whole lot of frills. It's just ever so slightly rounded, a little bit more natural feeling underfoot. You got just a little bit of natural stiffness. It's like mild to moderate, and it just has a very natural feel to it. The upper is constructed really well. This is the Magnafly that I'm talking about again, because I know we introduced the Flylight first. Excellent upper. The zip foam does feel softer than previous versions, and I feel like it has a little bit more bounce to it. It feels a little bit more zippy, and it's nice. It honestly, it's really, really nice.
Was that on purpose?
What
you called it more zippy? The zip foam is more zippy?
I said that?
Yeah.
Going right over my head, Nate.
Okay, now you're just
I'm kidding.
You're getting all of it. You're trying to
I'm trolling.
Troll all of us at one time.
But it's nice. It's a really, really nice trainer. I think especially at 140, value is sky high on this. It's just a matter of whether or not it agrees with you. A 0mm drop shoe, very moderate stack height, right? It's like 25, right? That's what it. Yeah.
26.
Yeah. 26. Yeah.
26.
Yeah. So it's not the highest shoe out there, but it provides good enough cushioning, and it's a nice ride. And at the weight, I mean, you can even turn it over just a little bit. It's not the fastest shoe out there, but it's a zero drop trainer that can just do a little bit of everything that you ask of it.
You know what? I figured it out. I know why my brain is stuck on all of these different kind of bad dad type jokes.
You went camping.
I went camping on a father-son camping trip with like a lot of other dads and their kids. So I apologize to everybody that you have to put up with me. Matt, you want to talk about the Flylight 6?
Yeah, I love this shoe. It's lighter. It's just got a little drop. I would say right now, not talk about this a billion times, my Achilles tendon's a little bit sensitive to lower drop shoes. And like zero drop can be a little difficult for me as a heel striker, because a lot of zero drop shoes will become negative drop shoes for those of you that are heel strikers, which is why I tend to prefer at least that 3 to 4mm drop in a lot of shoes. So, which is again made some other companies like with the elevating things a little bit been a lot helpful, but this has been a great shoe. It's definitely a little bit on the firmer side because there's a little bit less there. Really nice flexibility, but still actually kind of snappy underfoot. So I've used this for a lot of strides. This is the shoe that I use to prep my body for track spikes, because I was doing a mile race with the stroller and want to go, hey, I want to try to get into some track spikes. And I know if I jump into this, I'm going to get hurt. So I use this shoe quite a bit, and it's good. It can move, but it's also a really good all day shoe. It's one of my favorite shoes for walking around all day if I want something a little bit lower, but maybe don't want to be right on the pavement. So, and I think Andrea also, and I think Nathan, correct me if you also love this for lifting as well. It's been a great shoe that, a lot of running shoes you should not lift in because they don't always have the widest platforms. They're too high off the ground. This is one that actually is able to do that. Although we're seeing a lot of new hybrid shoes out there that are trying to do this. This is just a nice, simple one that can kind of do a little bit of everything. It's nice.
The one I like for lifting is a different one, but we'll get to it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But I mean, that I can imagine, that one would be good too.
I think it was Andrea that's really loved this shoe.
I think that's
for
true.
That, and also getting miles in, because she doesn't like the most high stack thing. She likes a more kind of low riding shoe for getting miles in. And so she has loved the Flylight.
Yeah. Awesome. So let's jump into kind of a really exciting category for Topo right now, which is their performance line. So they have shoes from the past are like the Specter 2 was kind of the old guard. And then you have the Cyclone 3. They've got the Pebax powered midsole, and we'll talk a little bit more about those shoes. But now coming out, you have the Specter 3 and the Specter Elite, which are featured in their, what they're calling their quote unquote Pro series. So I'll run through the specs on all of these, and then let's start talking about the Cyclone and then come into like this new Pro series. So with the Cyclone, I'll just start with those specs. With the Cyclone 3, lower stack in comparison to a lot of performance shoes, but in my opinion feels much higher than what it's listed. It's 28 in the heel, 23 in the forefoot, 6.9 ounces, $155. What is your all's kind of take on this shoe? And do you have guesses for what they're going to do next with the Cyclone?
I honestly, sorry, David, go for it.
I was just going to, who knows? I mean, I feel like the natural transition is to throw Rev foam in it, but I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's nice. It's that simplistic, lightweight, versatile trainer. Like that was my go-to shoe for track work, period.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Like Cyclone 2, I murdered 3 pairs of them. And Cyclone 3 came out as I was kind of transitioning away from running as hard.
Yep.
So I feel a little bad retrospectively because I think I would have still really enjoyed it for the same purpose, but I just wasn't doing it quite as much. And I feel like I didn't give the Cyclone 3 as much love as I gave the Cyclone 2 when they're very, very similar shoes. But I don't know. But yeah, it was like my go-to shoe. Nimble, lightweight, not super high up, great for transitioning into things like spikes. Now that spikes are allowed to go up to 25 mils, right? Or are they down to 20 now? I feel like there was another World Athletics ruling or something.
I don't remember.
I don't know. I'm not a track boy anymore. It's like, I just watch it. I don't run it anymore. But yeah, I feel like it was another shoe that was like very natural riding, and you're doing a lot of the work, and it felt very natural to do those high powered, high speed type efforts with just enough cushion. It was basically like the racing flat that wasn't a racing flat.
I will say, David, luckily Topo was very careful with version 3, and really the only thing they changed was some mild stitching in the upper, because they knew if they changed the shoe too much, a lot of people would be very upset. So it's been
including
classic.
Andrea.
Yeah, including Andrea. So it's just that full length Peba midsole, no plates. You got plenty of flexibility here for people that either want to go really fast. Like not everybody wants the stiffness of a carbon plate. Not everybody wants a maximal shoe, but a lot of people want that Pebax foam, and it does respond super well. It's very responsive, turns over really, really well. I've seen a good number of people racing this shoe, and that makes sense for those that don't want the stiffer ride but want the same bounce. Handles it really well with the wider toe box without being the tallest thing. So that's where that category fits. To answer that question, again, Nathan, I don't know what they're going to do with this. I could totally see them add Rev foam, but they got to be careful because this shoe has a pretty strong following. So I don't know where they'll go, but it provides something very unique.
I kind of hope they keep it a little bit on the firmer end. I think that they have now some very... We'll talk about opinions on how soft the new Rev foam is, but it's definitely different than the Pebax powered.
Yeah.
Definitely softer than that.
Yeah.
So let's get into that. So they have their new Pro series. We have the Specter 3, which if you have any experience in the Specter 2, it doesn't matter because it's a totally new shoe with the Specter 3. You're looking at
much better.
39 millimeters in the heel, 34 in the forefoot, 7.7 ounces, $170. So you're comparing price-wise from a performance shoe standpoint to like the Endorphin Speed. Then you go Specter Elite, 39 in the heel, 34 in the forefoot. This one does have the plate in it, as much as I thought that they wouldn't do that. 7.1 ounces and $250. So that one is looking at pretty consistent with a lot of the other racing shoes from a price perspective. So we've talked a lot about these shoes, but if you were going to give a summary of what are these models like to somebody who hasn't experienced Topo before, David, I'll let you maybe start with the Specter 3. What would you say?
Yeah, I would say slightly aggressively rockered, where it's this experience. It's because of the outsole. That's why I say that.
Slightly?
It gives you that little bump. It comes down a little bit earlier. So if that was a little bit more fluid, it would be very rockered. I feel like that slows you down just a little bit.
Yeah, it's fine. It's one of the more aggressively rockered shoes.
Almost like a Ultrafly hoof or something from the original.
Yeah.
It's an aggressively rockered shoe, lightweight, bouncy foam, a little bit more squirrely than the other foams that we've seen from Topo, but it's a great shoe. I want to get more miles on it, honestly. It was one of those things where I ran in it initially and then someone else covered the review, and I just had so many other shoes to focus on that I focused my mileage on those shoes. And now that I'm running a little bit more again, I think I am going to slip this on and see. Because I did like it. I did like it, but I didn't get a chance to really take it fast.
Yeah.
But it feels like a shoe that could easily get down to like marathon threshold type efforts and just be that training shoe, or maybe even marathon shoe for the right person. So at that 170 price point, it's 170, right? That's what you said?
Yep.
Yeah, like 170 feels pretty fair for what you're getting here. I feel like Topo in general too, just shout out, like price wise, they're pretty good. Like they're very competitive with the market when they release something. And a lot of the shoes I look at, I almost have to double take it where I'm like, oh dang, that's only 140, or like that's only like 150. Like where even though things go up in stack or the materials or whatever, like it stays very competitive with the market. So I've been quite pleased with them on that front. I'm curious about the Specter Elite. I didn't get that one. So I know you love it. I love that you love it. I mean, that's a huge step in the right direction because Klein can be a little bit of a critic sometimes.
To add something about the Specter, to add something about the Specter 3, I've said it before, and I have some thoughts about why that might be on a different video that you can look for. But I think that it's at minimum a true neutral shoe, if not slightly unstable, due to the way that it narrows in the midfoot and the lack of contact on the medial and lateral side of the midfoot can really make it squirrely. So I took it back out because I wanted to get more miles in it, and it irritated my fibularis tendons, which I'm still rehabbing. So it's one of those, like, if you have stability needs outside or inside, this is going to be really shaky through the midfoot. Again, not in a bad way if you don't have any issues, but just I think that's worth being aware of, because if this was my only shoe right now, I would not be able to run as much as I am because I can't handle, like, I even just did a 5-mile run in them, and that's what made me kind of feel the irritation. I want to take it on my long runs. Like, I think I would have a blast in this shoe on a long run because the foam is really great. It feels so aggressive when you first put it on, but once you're running, it doesn't level out, but it feels rhythmic. It doesn't feel like you're just falling forward. It feels really nice. So I also love this shoe, and I hope that I can rehab enough to be running really well in it and with a little bit more miles. Now, what do you want to talk about the Specter Elite?
Yeah, I first want to say that I think Topo, this is one of the few companies that have put Pro Series on a shoe series, and it totally deserve to call it that. The ATPU foams are wild. The geometry is wild. It's so radically different from anything. Even the previous version of the Specter, so radically different. It's like, whoa, these are fast. These are aggressive. Natural isn't the right term. Like, they've got the nice wide toe boxes, which there aren't a ton of wide toe box performance shoes, this is really nice to have. But the rocker geometry is very extreme. So you got to make sure you can handle that, but they are meant to go quick, which is nice. I've done a lot of workouts in the Specter 3. Agree, it's not the most stable thing, although interesting for me, the way, and David, you mentioned this, the way the midfoot's kind of set up almost feels like I get this extra pressure where it kind of drops, like it feels like a metatarsal lift. So even though it didn't feel stable initially, I've actually been fine running in it just because I have a lot of my instability actually comes from my forefoot and some genetic problems that I like, just anatomical variations I have in how my forefoot and my first ray are set up. It actually helps quite a bit. It still feels a little squirrely, as Nathan said. So like my post tip can go, but just so aggressive. It can handle workouts and up-tempo stuff so well. The Specter Elite is a totally different beast. It actually feels completely different than the Specter 3, where when you add the plate, and I would bet money that even though it says Revlite, like every company, it's not exactly the same foam. So this is very responsive.
Does it say Revlite or Rev Foam?
Sorry, Rev Foam. My bad.
Okay.
That was me.
I was like, is it just a genuinely different foam?
No, it feels a lot softer. And I'm sure Topo's going to say no, it's the same thing, but it feels a lot softer and far more resilient. I think for me, the plate and the sidewalls that are a little more prominent here, and the shoe's just a teeny bit wider, just make it actually one of the best stable neutral racers that have come out. It's just enough, even though the midfoot is missing. A lot of the other components do offset it, but yeah, and not missing. But,
it just doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's just gone. I'm just kidding.
That'd be the
that
Fast
company
R.
where it's all 4
Yeah,
foot.
the Fast R. And apparently, if any of you have seen photos, what looks like the Nike Vaporfly 5, which we don't have, but I've seen some crazy photos out there, but that's off topic. Just really super responsive, fantastic for 10K to marathon type efforts. I've done almost every, all my fast long runs recently have been in the shoe, done lots of workouts. I absolutely love this shoe. It doesn't have a lot of versatility for me into 5K type efforts because, and Dave and I have talked about this before, when it's really extremely rockered, sometimes it feels hard to kind of get into those really fast efforts. But long stuff where you're trying to maintain a faster pace, it is beautiful. It's bouncy. It keeps you going. It feels good. One of the few shoes where I'm like, a lot of times I don't want to do long runs in super shoes because I feel like it kind of takes away from like the training stimulus. This shoe is like, forget it. I'm grabbing this every time, and Regina's gonna have to deal with me pushing the pace while I'm pushing the stroller. Like, finally, the tables have turned where I can like push the pace. So very fun, lots of room. If I was gonna go run a half marathon, I will not run a marathon anytime soon. But if I was gonna have to run a half, which some people are trying to get me to run, it's gonna be in this shoe. Stable enough. I've done tons of long runs in it and had no problem by the end. It's great. Rolls really nicely. Probably one of my favorite super racing shoes of the year. Not trying to sell the shoe, and the fact that it's 250 with being the ATP, all the stuff, the durability is great at almost 60 miles.
Oh yeah, that's really good.
I did not expect, both these shoes did not expect this out of Topo, but I think them having these shoes, they really have some very impressive range and choices among the models, and so they've hit the performance section pretty hard.
Awesome. All right, so what we're going to do next is we're going to talk about their trail shoes. And they have a really full lineup of trail shoes. And so how we're going to cover these is I'm going to actually just list them all right off the bat. And then each of us are going to pick one or two that we have a lot more experience in to just talk a little bit about what that model is like and what you might get from Topo in this model. I think this is why I think they're from Colorado, because they have so many shoes that I would want to wear in Colorado.
How many times have you been to Colorado?
Huh?
How many times have you been to Colorado?
Ooh, probably like 6. I've been out there quite a bit.
Nice.
We have some friends out there. And
I've been 0. I got a lot of friends in Boulder. I need to go visit them.
Yeah,
if you're listening to this, fam, I'm sorry. I need to visit y'all.
No judgment. I've also been there. I have flown to their airport, but that's it. Although I am going in 2 weeks.
I've been through Denver Airport. I guess that doesn't count.
That doesn't count.
It's the same as me. It doesn't count.
Yeah, because I have an organization I was in college. Their headquarters was in Colorado Springs area, and so I went out a number of times in college. Went out for random vacations, and then our friends live out there, so we were just out there this past summer this current summer for a wedding as well. So yeah, it's a cool area. Lots of fun stuff. All right, so here we go. I'm going to run down the full list. And so the first 3 kind of are a increasing stack height kind of trail shoe. A lot of these are like, do you want to go hiking? You can wear it. If you want to go running, you can wear it. They kind of span that gamut between both. So the TerraVenture 5 is the lower stack, $145, 25 millimeters in the heel, 22 in the forefoot, 10.3 ounces. Then you go up a little bit to the Ultraventure 5, which is 35 in the heel, 30 in the forefoot, 10.7 ounces, $155. So just a little bit more stack. Then you go up a little bit more and you've got the Vista. That's 38 in the heel, 33 in the forefoot, 10.9 ounces, $175. Then the other ones that you have in here, you've got the Mountain Racer 4. That one also has a 5 millimeter drop, 33 to 28, 10.4 ounces, comes in at $155. Y'all keeping up with me? Here we go. Here comes the next one. We have the Pursuit 3. This is their 0 drop trail shoe. You're looking at 28 millimeters of stack in that shoe, 10.4 ounces, comes at $155. Then you have the shoes that they don't really categorize as runners as much as they are just hikers, especially the last one. This next one is the Traverse. They're coming out with the Traverse 2 as well. That's a 5mm drop. Think of like a through hiking type shoe, 10.6 ounces, 30 in the heel, 25 in the forefoot, comes in at $155. And then you have the Trail Venture 2 waterproof shoe. That's like high top hiker, like think the most traditional hiking shoe you can think of. It's 16 ounces and $185. It's like they're big hiking shoe. So Matt, if you had to pick one of these that you wanted to highlight, which one would you pick?
A big favorite has been the Mountain Racer as someone who likes good traction, something a little bit quicker. Version 4 isn't quite my favorite. I really loved version 3. It was like perfect. It was stable. And Topo reached out about this and I kept calling it like a stability trail shoe just because it felt like it had a medial post. They don't, but this can feel like that a little bit. Just feels nice and stable, really good traction, a little bit on the lighter side, not the lightest trail shoe out there, but it can move if you want it to. So I've really enjoyed that quite a bit. So that's kind of one of my favorites. I will say the Ultra Venture in their waterproof version is my go-to hospital shoe, and not for the reasons that Topo was designing them for, but the waterproof version is great because I've had tons of body fluids sprayed on me trying to work with patients of all kinds in acute care. I did not want that, obviously.
We need like
and it's
alert.
Been great. Yeah, sorry.
Trigger warning.
Sorry. Yeah, so for those of you that work in acute care, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
Things happen while you're trying to help mobilize people, get them moving so they don't worsen in their condition. And sometimes when you get them moving, you get certain parts of them also moving well, which is what you need so they can be discharged from the hospital. Like, we need you to go to the bathroom. It's really important to make sure.
Yeah, there's a common saying.
Yeah. So, and sometimes things happen, and that's just how it goes. So I will say the waterproof version really is waterproof. It's been great. And even though it's a trail shoe, it provides great traction and plenty of cushioning for all day wear in the hospital. So that's my non-trail use of a trail shoe. That's been fantastic.
Love it.
Yeah, and I will say
I was just curious about the Mountain Racer. Do you think, because they're using similar foam compounds and the weight isn't that different, do they consider it the Racer just because of the shaping of the geometry? Or like, are they putting more toe spring and more rocker in it compared to their other stuff? You know, like, because I look at some of their other ones and they're pretty standard, pretty flat across the top. Like, what is it that makes it the Racer? Is it, what do you think it is?
I don't know, to be very honest. I think it just happens to be on the lighter end. It is a teeny bit more rocker. Like, they actually have a really nice heel bevel. This is like laterally biased. I don't know. I think it's just on the lighter end, but somebody can correct me on that. I don't know. I've just been like, this is the Mountain Racer, and I enjoy being able to pick up the pace a little bit more on trail. It's just, but I don't know why. Great question.
I think that they have the capacity now to make a stellar performance trail shoe that they don't have in their lineup yet. Cause so many of these use the zip foam. They kind of feel similar to me. They all kind of feel similar to me, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But
the question is there the need? And I don't know this, and we've tested lots of super trail shoes, but what's does anybody know how popular super trail shoes are? Has that really hit the way, like road, like super shoes crush, like everybody uses them. Not everyone, obviously, but a huge portion of people use them for racing. Do we know what's happened in the trail world?
At the top, in the ultra world, definitely. Like the like Western States 100, they're all using
like the ACG Ultrafly, or they're using the Adidas version of their super trail shoe. But
I mean, recreational, like the people that are going to buy this stuff.
I guess I'm saying from an experience standpoint, like even the Alta Mesa 500 from North Face is really just fun to run in. Yeah. Like, it's just so enjoyable. You get the stability that you need on the trail, but you have a pleasant underfoot feel. Whereas I think, like I said, I love a trail shoe that can go from hiking to running, but like, you're not getting pop from any of these models from the foam. You're just not. And that's okay. But I think that they have space to add something.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I think from my experience, I worked medical at a trail race recently. I saw almost nobody. Granted, it was a very technical course. And so that was just the nature of the beast. Is the bounciest, most responsive thing wasn't necessarily the best option, especially with mud and all kinds of stuff. It's just curious. My one recent trail race experience, I'm like, oh, I didn't see anybody wearing them. Doesn't mean there's not a place. I was just curious if you two had any more experience with that.
I always think of like Lone Peak, Speed Goat.
Yeah.
Like I think people do tend to choose comfort a little bit more in the trails from a recreational standpoint, but I just haven't been around trail racing enough to speak to that with any kind of reasonable validity.
Sure.
For all I know, there are, high sales for the Cascadia Elite or like the S-Lab Pulsar, right?
Yeah,
or the S-Lab Ultra Glide,
right.
or, like they do have performance lines for a lot of these trail shoes, or the Tecton X, you know. I know some people are wearing the Tecton X's.
I've seen in the pro, like the fasters, a lot of people. Tecton, the Rocket X is also the Rocket X.
Oh yeah, Rocket X Trail. I forgot about that one.
Yeah, love that shoe. But
I think what would be great though, because I think the Alta Mesa, not to bring that shoe up a million times, but
it's okay. The Off Trail Ultra will just smother it.
I'm thinking like these shoes that can come in at a price point that is similar to a Speed Goat, but feel way better. Those aren't plentiful right now.
Yeah.
But I think that if you add more in that space, like I think there's room for it. Like, yes, the $250, $300 like elite trail racing shoe, different kind of market. But if you're looking at 150 to 160 and you can get a really nice foam in there that could just give you a little bit of pop, I think there's a market there.
Yeah. You're describing the Adidas Agravic SL. Terex Agravic SL. Yeah.
Is that the one with the super narrow midfoot though?
No. This one's a little bit wider. It's not like the Terex Agravic SL?
That midfoot's narrow. I know what you said doesn't feel like. I haven't tried it, but
I was going to say, narrow. You don't have that shoe.
I don't, but when you held it up the other day, I'm like,
Speed is narrow. That one's very narrow.
That is very narrow, as is the Ultra.
As is all the other ones. This one's wider than all of those.
Okay.
Yeah, but
I was thinking of the Terex Speed.
A lot of things are wider than a toothpick, to be fair, so.
Yeah. No, it's fun. It's like a Lightstrike Pro midsole on like a full Continental outsole.
David's totally right.
Yeah, like it's a solid shoe.
It is. Yeah.
All right, we got sidetracked. My fault.
We did.
But that is an example. I think it's 160, I believe, is the retail for that.
Yeah.
I'll do my one. It's I'm going to highlight the Traverse. This is the Traverse 2. This is one that they don't really market for running, and I just love it for being on my feet all day. This is a shoe that if I was going on a big backpacking trip, this would be the shoe that I would grab. So it's got very simple foam. It has a nice clip around the heel, which adds just some structure. It's got a bit of a heel counter. It has some buildup of the outsole kind of on the medial side as well as on the lateral side. So it's not going to let you roll an ankle. Really, really just comfortable. The fit is fantastic. They have an insole. It's a simple little thing, but it's got kind of a beaded insert. So it just feels nice on foot. If it gets wet, it dries really quickly. I was out in this in a lot of rain, and yes, it got wet, but by the next morning it was dry. So I think that's a nice thing too. So it's not a waterproof version that I have, but this is a great shoe. I've gotten a lot of time in version 1, wore it till it wore out, and I plan to do the same in version 2. David, what do you want to highlight any?
Yeah, I can just like run through a few real quick. Partially because I do like a lot of the trail offerings from Topo. So I'll start off with the TerraVenture 5, definitely low to moderate stack, 3mm drop right, a little bit more flexible forefoot. Now this one you could definitely run in, but I've actually found that this is kind of my go-to hiking shoe. Like this is my favorite. It's not super high up. I feel grounded. I feel natural when I'm walking. It fits really good. It locks down well. The lugs are sticky. I have zero complaints on that end. This is like definitely if I'm going on a hike, this is the shoe that I'm wearing. And it can run too, but I just usually go a little bit higher up when I'm running. That would lead me to the Ultraventure, just gradual, just gentle bevel, a little bit more stack under it, a little bit softer. The lugs aren't quite as aggressive on this one. Definitely feels more road to trail, runnable terrain. The Vista is kind of like the other kind of version where it's like also max stack, but much more vigorous lugs and more for technical terrain. So if you're looking between the Ultra Venture and the Vista and you're like, what's the difference? They're both the max cushion option. That's the difference mainly.
And
so the Vista has, and $20. And yeah, for $155, like the Ultra Venture, that's what I was saying earlier. Like that is a great price point for that shoe. Yeah. And like the GTX, I can verify that thing's waterproof AF. I took it in the shower, like, and tried to get my feet wet. I like straight up just dumped I just turned the water on and just let it run.
Is that the shoe you did that with?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
And it was fine. My feet were fine. I was like, all right, it passes. It's waterproof. Yeah, and then there's a saying in our world, movement creates movement, as far as inpatient work goes. Like you're all drugged up, you get up, you start moving around, everything else starts to move inside. That's what I was thinking of when Matt was talking about stuff earlier.
That's funny.
Yeah, and then the Pursuit is mainly meant to like kind of compete with the Lone Peak, that 0 millimeter drop, moderate stack height, grippy lug pattern. And the Pursuit's always been good. I really like the Pursuit too. I didn't get to try the Pursuit 3. But yeah, I feel like the Topo trail lineup, that's kind of what I used to think of them for.
Yeah.
And now their road models have all come along and they're doing really well there too. But I pretty much almost exclusively thought of them as like a trail company that has a few road options. But
I agree.
Now they're both good.
Yeah, they've kind of flipped the script and they're keeping or leveled the script, maybe.
Yeah, so I hit 4. Is that okay?
Love it.
5?
I love it. All right, their last category, and we'll go through this one relatively quickly, but they also do have their minimalist category still. So if you're looking for true minimalist footwear, they came out just with one of those shoes this year. That's the Topo Connect. So this is kind of a fun shoe because you kind of have two options. It comes with an insert that's pretty thick. It's like, I think it's like 10 millimeters of stack on the insert, or even 15. Sorry, I don't have it exactly there, but you can either keep that in or you can take it out, and the shoe kind of will give you either a little bit more volume, a little bit less volume, a little bit more stack, a little bit less stack. So it's kind of a cool shoe in that realm. The other shoe, regarding stack on the Connect, you're looking at 10.5 mils total in this. And I don't think that includes that insert. So it can be a bit higher than that. $130. Then the other shoe is the ST6. So this one is another zero drop shoe, 14 millimeters, 6.6 ounces, and $125. So I think the biggest difference between these two is the weight and the feel. So the stack, in the ST6 is coming from their foam. It uses the zip foam, whereas the stack in the Connect is this kind of outsole, and then it's got kind of a thicker foam on the inside that almost feels memory foam like, and then it's got the insert on top of it. I have gotten along much better with the ST6. I think the lightweight nature and the low stack pretty much lets me do everything I'd ever want in it. I could do, I do lift in it. This is like my lifting shoe every single time. And then I do some plyometric work in this shoe as well. I could do some sprints if I had to in this shoe and cut. Like, it's very stable on foot. The Connect, on the other hand, I haven't enjoyed as much from a comfort standpoint, but that's definitely more preference. Like, it feels like the name is apt. It feels like you're standing on the ground. Whereas the ST6, though it's not a lot of stack, it really feels like you have a little bit of something underneath you. So I think it's going to come down to your preference. If you really want to be connected to the ground, the Connect would be the way to go if you're going Topo. But this is like direct competition with looking at like Zero and looking at maybe like Vivo barefoot shoes. I think that's the comparator here, where it is the ST6 is more of feels like a running shoe, but like from a underfoot feel because of the foam utilization. Do y'all have anything else you want to add on these? Cool.
No.
Sweet. Well, that was pretty fun to run through a brand that our team has really been a big fan of. I think that they have taken intentional steps with their design and their changes. I also think that they've maintained really high quality of their materials and of their construction. Like, I don't know if we've had any issues, if y'all have any issues, but durability wise, I feel like stuff has stuck around for me. And it's been It's been a fun company. I'm excited to see where they go.
Some of the older models definitely had some challenges with upper durability and outsole durability. That has drastically improved probably in the last year, where that's gotten a lot better.
Cool. Fantastic. Well, everyone, thank you for joining us on the Doctors of Running podcast. We really love getting to interact with you all. And so if you have any other thoughts or questions that you want to add, you can either comment if you're on YouTube, or you can send us an email at doctorsofrunning@gmail.com, and we will do our best to incorporate your questions into our next episode or a future episode. And so we'll talk to you all next time.